Hello everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Moxham Trails. This is the story of my son Ethan and I turning an 18-acre piece of property in the Adirondacks into our own outdoor wonderland. In our first two visits, Ethan and I cut down the saplings in the driveway and the clearing, leaving only these thorny bushes and some dead grass to clean up. In this episode, we're going to try our first overnight visit, but first, let's set up camp. If you've watched the first two episodes of Moxham Trails, you've probably seen enough time-lapse video of me and Ethan doing yard work, cutting down trees and raking. So I'm going to save you the torture of going through another one of those and just do a little bit before and after. This is what the upper clearing looks like now with all of those pricker bushes and tall grass, and we'll see what it looks like when we're done. Okay, this is what it looks like after the first pass. Probably doesn't look much different than it did before. I can't really tell because I've been staring at it for the last hour and a half. I have two tools that I knew I'd be using. One is the iron rake and the other is a set of pruning shears. The shears I decided to hold off on. It was kind of a catch-22 of which I should use first. If I used the shears first, then I would be cutting through a lot of dead material that didn't need to be clipped. And then if I used the rake first, I was going to be raking through a lot of living stuff, so the stuff that's still rooted in the soil was kind of catching on the rake, but it was one or the other. So I went over everything with the iron rake and got most of the dead stuff out of the way, a few rocks and things like that. This area over here was the spot that I wanted to focus on the most, but I quickly realized that it's just too much. So rather than being the area I work the most, it became my debris pile. All the stuff that I've gathered up through here, I've actually been throwing over there. I'll probably regret having my debris pile so close to the clearing in the future, but I'll just have to worry about that at a later date. Next, I'm going to go through and I'm going to clip all the stuff that's still rooted in the soil. Clip all these things with the clippers, and then probably make another pass with the rake to gather them all up. Okay, here we are about 45 minutes later, and Ethan and I have been clipping away at the live stuff. A lot of really little stems and little pieces. If I had known that, I probably would have brought up a weed whacker to take care of most of it. As it is, we use those trimmers for most of it, and then for the slightly larger stuff, we have a pair of handheld pruners. One of the reasons I didn't use a weed whacker was because the one I have at home is battery powered, and the battery life probably isn't long enough to put much of a dent into this. A gas powered weed trimmer with a metal blade on it would have gone through this stuff like butter, but it's done now. We're gonna go over it again with the iron rake and try to pull up all this stuff. We really just cut everything down and left it so that I could rake it up when we were done, but I think it's looking a lot better, and I can't wait to see what it looks like after we rake it one more time. Another thing that's making this job a little more difficult is that it is the heart of black fly season right now, and although they're not as bad as I thought they would be, they're bad enough that we've resorted to wearing these bug nets, which are doing an excellent job, but when you're doing a lot of bending over, it kind of works its way down and you find yourself fixing it. All in all, I'm really glad we have them, and they're doing a good job, but it does make working out here a little bit more cumbersome. Okay, that's what we have right now, and I'm going to call it for the day. One, because I'm exhausted, and two, because I don't really think there's much more we can do right now without different equipment. So I'll give you a quick tour. There's Ethan, my helper, still in good spirits. There's the brush pile, I guess you'd call it, the debris pile that will one day be gone through and cleared out and pushed back, but for right now, that's kind of where I need it to be. Here is the finished product, at least for the time being. A lot of dirt with tufts of grass. I'm hoping that those pieces of grass will spread and we can make this whole hill grass. I don't plan on seeding it, just kind of let it grow through. But maybe in the future we'll seed it, I don't know. We didn't really tackle the very top of the upper clearing. Up here is going to be our congregation area, I guess you could call it, the social area where we're going to build a fire pit and kind of hang out, maybe a picnic table or something. But I didn't really get a chance to get up this far. This will be a job for another time. And there's the other side of the upper clearing, also debris pile that will probably get pushed back at some point. And here's the view from the top. I'm pretty happy with it. It took a lot of work, definitely harder than I thought it was going to be. We found something when we were setting up our camp, something I had not noticed in our last couple of visits, but was sitting right here. This looks like it was a former fire pit. It's got a nice circle of stones and a couple of charred pieces of wood in the middle. It's been a while since it's been used, clearly. There's trees growing right up next to it, and there's a lot of dead leaves and dead grass in there, but I think we might try to revive this today rather than build our own. So this is what it looks like now, and we'll see what it looks like in a little while when we're done working on it.
Summer, 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 it's like a merry-go-round.
Okay, so we have our fire pit. I'm sure that all you Boy Scouts out there and fire rangers are probably going to yell at me and say this isn't good enough. There's probably a bit of danger with the surrounding dry grass, but we're really shooting for something very small here. And to be honest, all the campgrounds I've ever been to have plenty of grass and vegetation this close to their campfires, so I'm really not too worried about it. We'll be careful. I've got a jug of water right next to me, and thought it'd be fun to start this fire with some of these fire starters that we made from an idea on Pinterest. You save your toilet paper rolls and stuff them with the lint from your dryer, and then wrap it in some wax paper, and it makes a nice little fire starter. So I've got 2 of those, and yes, I'm cheating. I'm gonna start with the Duralog. I just like the way they burn, and it's nice and easy. I know it's gonna start right up. So that's our base, and I thought we'd try a ferro rod that I bought online not too long ago.
She's on fire. She's on fire.
Well, we survived the night, but Ethan and I realized just how many bug bites we got yesterday, even with the nets on. So we're probably going to call it a short day today. We don't want to leave yet. It's still morning, but we're not going to do as much work as we did yesterday. The plan today is to pack everything up and then go for a walk in the woods. Okay, the campsite is all packed up. I left Lou out in case of an emergency, and now we are gonna go for a walk and see if we can scope out where we're gonna make our first trail. I'm gonna record this on my GPS and take some pictures along the way, maybe some videos if we find something really good. The first trail we make is gonna be a double track, meaning that there will be enough room for four-wheeled vehicles like ATVs and UTVs. We'll still be able to ride on it with our mountain bikes, but its main function will be as a supply road and the quickest way to the top of the property. The old logging trails seem like a logical place to start, but the ground clearance on those logging trucks must have been really high, because there are stumps and rocks in the middle of the trails that can't be cleared by a four-wheeler or a UTV, especially one that's pulling a trailer. As Ethan and I are walking, we often come across trees that have been knocked over either by the wind or by other falling trees. Sometimes there's just a stump that's a couple feet high, but other times the stumps are taller, say 8 or 9 feet high. Ethan enjoys knocking these down. Don't worry, I always check them to make sure there's no danger of the stump breaking farther up and falling down on him. The rock wall that runs along the northeastern side of the property, or the top as I call it, has become a feature Ethan and I both really like. I don't know that I'll ever use it for anything, but it's a solid line marking one of the longest borders of the property, and you can't miss it. So we're back at the spot where Ethan got stuck on our first visit, and the water's still flowing. It's not as heavy as it was last time, but you can see it's moving a bit. My plan is, I'm not sure how hard this would be, but I'd really like to dig out this mud and kind of make a channel for the water, and maybe we could actually have a stream year-round, and also use this mud, make a pile of it, let it dry out, and use that dirt when we start making mountain bike features on the property. And of course, every trip around the property requires a stop at the waterfall. It's not going quite as heavy as it was the last time, but it's still there. And speaking of things we do each time, here's our view of Moxham Point. This stump right here is the spot I've chosen as my marker, so I know I'm taking pictures from the same spot each time. Kind of stand here and turn around. There's the mountain. The sun is right in our face, so I don't know how this is coming out. I can't even see my camera screen, but you can definitely tell that the leaves on these trees are opening up. They're going to have to come down if we're going to have any chance of a year-long view, and that'll be a job for one of the next few trips. Got to get some friends up here and have a chainsaw party. And now it's time for Ethan's Moxham moment.
Hi, this is Ethan, and I'm going to be showing you all the cool animals we found on our visit. This is a salamander we found while we were cleaning the fire pit. I love how bright orange he is. I named him Marshmallow. We also saw 2 snakes. One of them was too quick, and it slithered under a rock before we could take a picture. But this one was in the clearing, so we followed him for a few minutes. We also saw 2 really big spiders. I was impressed of how well they blend in with the grass. Well, that's all for now. I'll see you next time on Ethan's Moxham Moment.
When we got home and I had a chance to look at the GPS from our walk, that's the blue line on this map, I found it helpful to compare it to one from our first visit. The first thing I noticed is that we wandered onto the neighboring property, right here, yet we were able to follow the border quite closely on our first trip. I think that when you're walking through the woods, once you identify the border, it's marked well enough that it's not hard to follow. But if you're not already following it, it can be easy to miss and cross into the neighboring property. I plan to run our double track trail fairly close to this property line, so once that's built, it will serve as a guide to make sure this doesn't happen again. The next thing I noticed is that because of the swampy area near corners 4 and 5, there's a large area between corners 2 and 3 that we haven't even explored yet. I'll have to either wait till it's drier or sometime when Ethan isn't with me so he doesn't get stuck as we try to cross. And speaking of unexplored areas, we've been walking around the perimeter, but the entire middle of the property is relatively unknown. Ethan and I have wandered into this area a couple times, but I didn't record it on my GPS and we weren't really paying close attention to our position. So we still have some surveying to do in this area. The good news is that the clearing, which has been taking up most of our time, is coming along nicely, and I think we can start to spend more of our time getting familiar with the woods. That about does it for this episode of Moxham Trails. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.